Welcome to this Jeremy Bamber and White House Farm podcast season 4. Today we remember Jeremy's family who lost their lives on the 7th of August 1985. First, John McGowan makes a tribute to Jeremy's family. This is followed by an extract from the Roman Stoic writer Seneca the Younger on overcoming grief. Finally, there is a poem, The Gypsy, by Claire Harner. After the tribute, I'll be explaining why the sound moderator was so important in Jeremy's conviction.
39 years ago, on the 7th of August 1985, the White House Farm tragedy took the lives of Nevill and June Bamber, their daughter Sheila, and her two 6-year-old sons Daniel and Nicholas. It's fair to say that much water has flowed under the bridge since that tragic night, and a lot of it very murky indeed. But the fact remains that 4 completely innocent people had their lives taken, and one tragically undermedicated, misdiagnosed and largely misunderstood woman took her own. With the miscarriage of justice surrounding this dreadful case, the lives lost have for a large part become sadly quiescent and collateral. This should not be the case, as the Bambers were a loving and highly respected family. Indeed, Nevill was a local magistrate and was a former RAF pilot. Both Nevill and June had been church wardens and took an active part in church activities locally. Owing to her struggle with the menopause, June had endured mental health issues in the latter part of her life. Their inability to have children of their own brought June and Nevill to the loving and charitable decision to adopt. Sheila was placed for adoption in 1957 at the age of approximately 2 weeks, and Jeremy in 1961 at approximately 6 weeks. Nevill and June wanted nothing but the best for their family and paid for private education. Despite the challenges raised by Sheila's mental health, Nevill and June's love of their family was exemplified by the prioritization of the well-being of their 2 beautiful grandsons, an issue that would eventually lead to their deaths and the deaths of Daniel and Nicholas, as well as the self-inflicted death of Sheila on that tragic night. May they all rest in peace and rise in God's glory.
I am not soothing you or making light of your misfortune. If fate can be overcome by tears, let us bring tears to bear upon it. Let every day be passed in mourning, every night be spent in sorrow instead of sleep. Let your breast be torn by your own hands, your very face attacked by them, and every kind of cruelty be practised by your grief, if it would profit you. But if the dead cannot be brought back to life, however much we may beat our breasts, if destiny remains fixed and immovable forever, not to be changed by any sorrow, however great, and death does not lose his hold of anything that he once has taken away, then let our futile grief be brought to an end. Let us then steer our own course, and no longer allow ourselves to be driven to leeward by the force of our misfortune. He is a sorry pilot who lets the waves wring his rudder from his grasp, who leaves the sails to fly loose, and abandons the ship to the storm. But he who boldly grasps the helm and clings to it until the sea closes over him deserves praise, even though he be shipwrecked.
Do not stand by my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am the 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints in snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. As you awake with morning's hush, I am the swift, upflinging rush of quiet birds in circling flight. I am the day transcending night. Do not stand by my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
In today's episode, we are going to look at why the silencer or sound moderator as it is sometimes referred to, and will be referred to as both silencer and sound moderator interchangeably throughout this presentation, was so important in Jeremy Bamber's conviction, and how we now know it was nothing more than a red herring. In other words, it simply played no part in the tragedies at White House Farm. Jeremy told the police he was woken at around 3:15 a.m. by a phone call from his father saying his sister, Sheila, had gone crazy and had hold of the gun. The line then went dead. Unable to get his father back on the phone, he then called police at 3:36 a.m. to report what his father had said. Because Jeremy had claimed he received a call from his father, the murderer had to either be him or Sheila. With no forensic evidence against Jeremy, the prosecution had to demonstrate that the murderer could not possibly have been Sheila. And so it would follow it must have been Jeremy. With only circumstantial evidence against Jeremy, and with Sheila being the more obvious suspect, this was a hurdle the prosecution needed to get over if they had any hope of securing a conviction. The prosecution's case was that Jeremy attacked the family with the rifle and a silencer attached and made it appear that Sheila had committed the murders before turning the rifle on herself. Nevill Bamber had fought with Jeremy in the kitchen, and during the course of a ferocious struggle between the two men, the rifle, with silencer attached, hit the underside of the mantel above the Aga, scraping paint from it, which impacted into the knurled pattern at the end of the silencer. Jeremy then proceeded to shoot Sheila, again with the silencer attached, but realised she would not have been able to reach the trigger with it attached to the rifle, so he removed it and placed it in a box at the back of the gun cupboard, which was actually nothing more than an understairs storage space. The prosecution asserted that it could not have been Sheila who fought with her father, as he would have overpowered his much smaller and weaker daughter, and further, she would not have been able to kill herself, remove the silencer from the rifle, and then place it back in the cupboard. A speck of blood matching Sheila's blood and enzyme type was also found in the silencer, caused by backspatter, proving, said the Crown, that she was shot with the silencer attached to the rifle. To emphasise how important the silencer was to the case, it is pertinent to note that, during their deliberations, the jury asked for a recap of the blood evidence and were told by the trial judge, Justice Drake, that the blood found inside it belonged to Sheila and no one else. Drake stated this supposed fact 5 separate times. The jury returned a 10-2 majority guilty verdict just 17 minutes later. So, how do we know the silencer was not attached to the rifle when Sheila was shot? And what about the blood that was found? And what of the paint caused by an alleged fight with Nevill Bamber in the kitchen? Let's start with the scratch marks to the underside of the mantel. The prosecution asserts these scratch marks were so obvious that they couldn't have been there prior to the 7th of August, or someone would have known about them. Therefore, they must have been made during the incident. In that case, it would be fair to say Anne Eden should have noticed them shortly after the tragedies when she was at White House Farm, specifically cleaning that area and, in her own words, looking for clues. But she didn't. No one saw any scratch marks until the 14th of August, when the police took a penknife to the area to collect paint samples. Furthermore, the paint that allegedly impacted into the knurled pattern at the end of the silencer during the fight was not observed on it by forensic scientists when they first examined it on the 13th of August, or again on the 12th of September. Then, 25 flecks of paint suddenly appeared on it when it was examined a further time on the 25th of September. The late Peter Southurst, a technical director of a photographic consultancy company and fellow of the British Institute of Professional Photography, examined the crime scene photographs, including ones showing the right-hand side view of the surround for the Aga and ones directly underneath the mantel where the scratches were made. On the first photo of the right-hand side of the Aga, he concluded that scratches should have been visible in this photograph, but they were not there. In relation to the photograph of the floor directly underneath where the scratches were made, he found no evidence of paint or wood chips on the floor, even though reconstruction tests concluded these should have been visible. Furthermore, he concluded that a small red object that did not match the paint under the mantel and was consistent with a small chip in Sheila's toenail varnish proved that the camera would have picked them up if they had been there. In her statement dated the 16th of September 1985, Anne Eaton said that she saw police take out a penknife and cut samples of paint from the underside of the mantel. When recalling this incident in 1991, she admitted that she was told by DS Stan Jones that she hadn't seen anything. We also have documented fresh evidence that shows at least 3 separate samples of paint were taken from the underside of the mantel by 3 different officers on at least 2 different dates. Were the flecks of paint discovered on the silencer on the 25th of September the ones collected by police officers using a penknife? This would certainly explain why Anne Eaton was told she hadn't seen it happen. So, if the scratches were not there on the 7th of August, then they were not made during the course of a fight between Jeremy and Nevill, which completely undermines this part of the prosecution's case. And what about Sheila? How can we be sure that she was not shot with the silencer attached to the rifle? In 2012, David R. Fowler, Chief Medical Examiner for the State of Maryland, USA, carried out a peer-reviewed forensic pathology assessment of the records relating to Sheila Cathell. The defence asked him to opine on the following 2 questions. 1. Is there an appreciable difference between a wound caused by a rifle when there is no sound moderator attached and with a sound moderator attached? 2. Based on the available evidence, can a qualified indication be made as to which the wounds on Sheila Cathell are more compatible with wounds caused by a rifle with a sound moderator attached, or wounds caused by a rifle with no sound moderator attached? Dr. Fowler was provided with the following. 1. Photographs of Sheila Cathell at the scene and autopsy. 2. Post-mortem X-rays of Sheila Cathell. 3. Photographs of Nevill Bamber, June Bamber, Nicholas Cathell and Daniel Cathell at the scene and autopsy. 4. Photographs of the muzzle of the rifle, sound moderator and ammunition. 5. General examination report of the sound moderator. 6. Manual of the Anschutz rifle. 7. Ballistics report of Major P.J.F. Meade, November 29, 1987. 8. Post-mortem report by Dr. Peter Venesis, September 30, 1985. 9. Interview of Dr. Peter Venesis, November 12, 1986. 10. Expert witness statements of Mr. Malcolm Fletcher, November 13, 1986. 11. Trial transcript of Mr. Malcolm Fletcher. And 12. Trial transcripts of testimony of Dr. Peter Venesis. The focus of the review was on the gunshot wounds themselves to make a determination on the use of a sound moderator in Sheila Cathell's death. In answering the first question of whether or not there is an appreciable difference between a wound caused by a rifle when there is no sound moderator attached and with a sound moderator attached, Dr. Fowler concluded that there is an appreciable difference depending on location of the wound and distance of the shot. In the case of Sheila Caffel, he concluded that the bullet holes were contact wounds, and so, therefore, there would be an appreciable difference. In answering the second question on whether Sheila's wounds were compatible with ones caused by a rifle with a sound moderator attached, or wounds caused by a rifle with no sound moderator attached, Dr. Fowler said, "The injury on the underside of the chin consists of 2 entrance gunshot wounds and some fine abrasions. 2 sets of abrasions are closely related to the gunshot wound located lower on the neck in the photographs. The first set of abrasions, situated below the entrance wound, is approximately the same distance from the entrance wound to be consistent with the location of the ancient's front sight mount. A second set of 3 fine abrasions is located approximately 1/4 of an inch above the lower wound and is consistent with the diameter of the threaded portion of the muzzle. These abrasions could have been caused by the imprint mechanism previously described. A weapon discharged in this position would force the gases into the skin on the underside of the chin, forcing the tissue outwards to strike not only the end of the muzzle, but also the front sight. The abrasions, 1/4 of an inch above the lower wound, is more consistent with the 1/2 inch threaded portion of the weapon without a silencer. The end of the Parker Hale silencer is 1 inch in diameter, and there is a 3/4 inch contusion around the lower wound. This contusion can also be explained by a smoky cavity accentuated by the larynx. Therefore, in my professional opinion, the complex just described of the lower entrance wound and 2 abrasions is consistent with the rifle not having a silencer. There are no distinctive marks surrounding the upper wound that indicate anything other than a contact wound. Neither wound showed an imprint, abrasion or contusion suggestive of the 1 inch diameter end of the silencer. There is a 3/4 inch contusion eccentric to the lower wound, but as stated above, more consistent with the laryngeal cartilage caused by a smoky cavity. Furthermore, the residue described in the autopsy report by Dr. Venices is consistent with the soot classically seen in contact gunshot wounds. Dr. Fowler's report was peer-reviewed by Louisa Jovan Dragovic, Chief Medical Examiner, Oakland County, Michigan, and Marcella F. Fierro, Chief Medical Examiner of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Further evidence to support that no silencer was attached to the rifle when Sheila was shot is supported by ballistics expert Philip Boyce, who also carried out a physical examination using a .22 Anschutz rifle and pigskin. He shot the pigskin with and without a silencer attached. The 2 marks made were very different. Without the silencer, it left a small, smoky-looking oval hole, and with a silencer, a small oval hole with a thin circular ring around it. Philip concluded that the wounds to Sheila's neck were made without the silencer attached. You can visit our website, jeremy-bamber.co.uk, and you will be able to see the photos of the gunshot wounds to the pigskin with and without a silencer compared to the shots to Sheila Caffel's neck, and you can make up your own mind which you think most closely resembles the ones on Sheila's neck. So, if Sheila wasn't shot with the rifle with a silencer attached, how did her blood come to be found inside it? After all, remember, Justice Drake told the jury that the blood inside the silencer belonged to Sheila and Sheila alone, which sealed Jeremy's fate 17 minutes later. At the trial, the prosecution's ballistics expert, Malcolm Fletcher, described to the court that, in his opinion, Sheila's blood entered the silencer from the contact wound to her neck through a process he referred to as backspatter. This, he concluded, led him to believe that the silencer was attached to the .22 rifle when Sheila received her wounds. Backspatter is a type of bloodstain pattern resulting from blood drops that travel in the opposite direction of an external force applied associated with an entrance wound created by a projectile, i.e. a bullet. To support his argument, Malcolm Fletcher quoted an article which was written by scientists Stevens and Allen called Backspatter of Blood. This article was central to his testimony for the prosecution against Jeremy. These two scientists had not carried out their own experiments, but simply quoted the results of those done by Dr. Herbert Leon MacDonald, the founder of the Bloodstain Institute of America. However, MacDonald's own work is now seriously undermined following his conviction as a child sex offender who used his influence in his professional role to prevent detection, and therefore the integrity of his research is certainly brought into question. Fletcher gave testimony that he had never observed the phenomenon of backspatter himself, and no one had ever observed backspatter of blood in a .22 caliber weapon, the caliber of rifle used in the incident at White House Farm. Fletcher admitted that he had not conducted any experiments to establish the possibility of backspatter, claiming he had neither the facilities nor the equipment to conduct such tests. When asked how much a silencer would reduce the emission pressure which were essential for backspatter to occur, he informed the court he had no idea. The third-hand opinion about backspatter used at trial by Fletcher in an attempt to explain how Sheila's blood came to be in the silencer is now known to have been in relation to a .38 revolver and not a .22 rifle, following the tests conducted by Herbert Leon MacDonald, and even then his testimony as an expert witness cannot be relied upon. Stevens and Allen recorded that, according to some experts, backspatter of blood from gunshot wounds does not exist. They state a number of times that backspatter cannot be achieved from a fleshy part of the body, and it appears that Malcolm Fletcher misinterpreted their comments. They wrote, "In our experience, backward spatter of blood occurs most commonly in association with contact gunshot wounds of the head. Backspatter rarely occurs in gunshot wounds of the abdomen and chest. Backspatter is not typically associated with wounds in which there is a potential space immediately underlying the entrance site. The accelerating force is the backward stream of escaping gas trapped between the elastic skin and the rigid skull. In the case of Sheila Cathell, her 2 gunshot wounds were located in the soft flesh directly below her chin on her neck, and there is no hard surface beneath the wounds to support the expanding gas and therefore nothing to create backspatter. At trial, Fletcher was asked how else the blood could have come to be inside the silencer, down to perhaps the 6th or 7th baffle plates. Fletcher stated that someone could have dripped the blood into the silencer to account for the quantity found inside it. We know that the blood and enzyme group found in the silencer matched Sheila Cathell, but it was also an exact match to her uncle and the Bamber estate beneficiary Robert Bowflower, and 8% of the population. Therefore, the judge's comments to the jury that the blood belonged to Sheila and Sheila alone was completely untrue. In addition to this, a document was found in March 2017 which revealed that on the 29th of April 1986, forensic scientists Glynis Howard and D.I. Ron Cook discovered an additional blood group besides that of Sheila and Robert between the 4th and 5th baffle plates. The 2 enzymes that were identified in the sample matched 2 of the other beneficiaries, David Bowflower, who found the silencer, and his mother, Pamela Bowflower. It does not match any of the deceased. The 1986 jury were not advised of the second blood group, and neither D.I. Cook nor Howard made witness statements regarding the blood they discovered. DNA testing in 2002 revealed that Sheila's DNA was not present in the silencer, but that of an unknown male's was. Robert Bowflower, never gave a DNA sample. We can therefore only conclude, in light of the evidence discussed in this podcast, the blood found inside the silencer was not Sheila Caffell's, and that the silencer was not on the weapon when she was shot. It is a hugely unfortunate coincidence that the blood found was a match for Sheila's blood and enzyme type. But that's exactly what it was, an unfortunate coincidence. This means that, quite contrary to the prosecution's claims, Sheila Caffell could have easily killed herself and so was the most likely suspect. Therefore, Jeremy Bamber's conviction, based solely on circumstantial evidence, should never have happened.
If you'd like to join our mailing list for the latest updates on the case as they happen, please email us via our website www.jeremy-bamber.co.uk.